Nerdcast Empire is on the air. We are back with another episode of the Nerdcast Empire. So glad to have you along with us once again. I am Matt in the studio. We are talking all things WWE Money in the Bank, and certainly a very interesting Money in the Bank, as we had a cash-in attempt. We had just a couple of really chaotic matches and some big news, which is how we're going to lead off this podcast as well. Really excited to have the crew in the studio once again tonight. Joining me, as always, in the studio is Mike. Mike, how's it going?
It's going pretty well. Good show. I think a couple things that happen really kind of show you the attention to detail and kind of that effort to book long term. I think it just... I talk about it a lot, but you just feel like it's a much more inspired product, and it shows even on cards like this.
Yeah, no question about it. I definitely saw, some online criticism about some decisions made. In fact, I think I had a reply to one of my tweets from the Nerdcast Empire account talking about that, and I think I'm going to disagree with that, but we'll get to that as we go on. Overall, I thought pretty much everything they did had some sort of logical basis, which I think is what's been a staple of modern WWE booking compared to the Vince era for sure. Joining us in studio once again is Rachel. Rachel, how's it going?
It's good. Very good. Like Mike said, it was a great card. I think everyone looked strong on it, even the people that didn't win. So just a lot of exciting stuff up ahead.
It was an exciting night on the scorecards tonight. Very fortunate to come out on top tonight after not picking one of the results correctly. I rallied to finish 7th overall, which is kind of crazy considering I didn't get all the winners right, but it was a really well put together card. And we're going to get to talking about the card and the results, because obviously that's what we're here to do. But we do need to kind of start off with the big news item, which happened in the middle of the Premium Live event. A lot of the rundowns just kind of had it marked as a Trish Stratus segment, and she was involved in that segment. But as the rumors had kind of been flying around that John Cena may be in Toronto, well, of course, John Cena came out and kind of set the tone right away with his shirt and towel that basically kind of gave away what he was going to talk about. He announced that he was going to be stepping away from WWE. We found out more details after the Premium Live event, which is why we're on a little bit late, because we kind of wanted to get the full details, but it does appear he's going to go on a retirement tour for a year starting in January 2025, wrapping up in December 2025. They said right now they're looking at about 30 or so dates that he's going to be making trips, which I would assume would be most of the Premium Live events, but also live TV, maybe even some house shows as well. I'm sure we're going to find out more details as we get closer. He kind of made a point to mention that he wanted to be on the first Netflix Raw. That's January 1st. He wants to, be there for a lot of these new, really cool things that are going to happen. And at the same time, he made it very clear that when December hits, he's done. He's not going to be a special guest referee. Like he said, he's not going to just fall through a table on accident. He's going to be in a suit and tie. He's going to be, but he did certainly allude to the fact that it looks like he has signed an extension with WWE that will keep him with the company, likely in an advisory role or a backstage role even beyond December 2025. Start off with Mike with this one. Certainly not news that anybody had leaked out in any way, shape, or form. But I hate to say it overshadowed the Premium Live event because it was a really great show, and I thought the card did really well. But news of this magnitude is going to overshadow really any event that it's tied to because it's John Cena and what this means. Your thoughts on everything we've kind of found out so far?
Yeah, it's pretty wild, and it's funny to hear him talk about it, that, he spoke with WWE, and it was almost like they were trying to figure out when the right time to do it was. It just feels like such a contrast to what happened leading into WrestleMania this year, where it was like, oh, you mean we shouldn't do this right now, even, because you have all this other stuff built up, we should do it some other time? Oh, okay. This actually feels like a concerted effort to like, hey, when can you fit in my year-long retirement? And I think that probably just speaks to Cena not wanting to get in the way, but it's also really cool because, you're kind of curious where the story's going to go after this year, because presumably you get Roman back, probably The Rock back leading into the end of the year. And now we know we have this whole Cena thing that's going to occur next year. It's like you already kind of know storylines that are going to occur and that aren't even going to start for another 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of made it clear that the biggest reason he's doing this is he wants to basically give back to the fans and say thank you for giving him the career and the life that he's had. But didn't deny the fact that there may be opportunities for him to earn a title shot to get that 17th title to put his name up above Ric Flair as the winningest world champion of all time. But at the same time, you didn't get the feeling that he's campaigning for that. It's just one of those things that if WWE decides, hey, let's do this, he's not going to say no. But I think if it goes through the entire year without him getting that 17th title, I don't think it's going to be a failure of some kind.
I think also probably to Cody's pleasure, he didn't say he was going to come back for the young guys to put them over. And,
That's true.
He's just here for the young guys. He didn't say any of that either.
Rachel, your thoughts on all this? Yeah, I mean, that was reference to Cody's comment that certainly feels pointed at several people in the industry right now,
Yeah.
not to mention any names, but kind of feels like maybe some of them are in it for the wrong reasons. But your thoughts on all this, because obviously you maybe a little being younger than the two of us, maybe even kind
And
of
having bad taste.
and having bad taste.
Hey.
Maybe even more identify with Cena's era, even more so than us. Your thoughts on the announcement and kind of what you're looking forward to out of this whole thing.
I mean, it's crazy that he's been wrestling in WWE for 22 years. When he said that, like, me being 36, I'm like, oh, wow, okay. I didn't watch him a lot when he first came in because I don't think I was watching wrestling at that moment. But obviously, you know, the mid 2000s when I got back into it, it's just such a huge, and I mean, I thought Undertaker was the end of an era because he was. But John Cena has been so big in this era to everybody, whether you loved him or you hated him. I mean, he's just been a big deal. So I cannot wait to see who they put him against, even if it's just 30 matches. Like, who's he going to fight?
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see, and I think, you know, they now have time to kind of map out what that's going to look like. And maybe they already have, because obviously they've done a much better job of setting these things up. And, of course, injuries and stuff can always change plans, but it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But you start looking at the bigger picture in wrestling. We just had Sting retire, and certainly for all the criticism we have of AEW, they certainly treated him like a big deal during his run and gave him a send-off, maybe even greater than you know what you might anticipate someone getting at this point in their career. You've got AJ Styles has certainly not been very shy about saying that he's winding things down, doesn't really have a set date on it. I know Bryan Danielson has kind of openly talked about, you know, his days are kind of numbered, and at some point he's going to be part-time at best. It really is starting to kind of hit people, especially of our age, that it feels like there's a changing of the guard. And maybe it's just a changing of the industry, too, because kind of like Cena alluded to, used to be, there's three types of retirements. There's the ones that you get forced into because you get hurt. There's the ones that are used as a ruse to attack the champion and get a championship match. And there's the ones
He would know about that one.
Yes, and of course we just saw AJ Styles pull that off as well. And there are the ones that people go back on after a year or 2 years or 3 months or whatever it is. So it does feel like the modern wrestlers, these guys that I mentioned specifically, are guys that are like they've taken care of their money. They want to be able to walk in their senior. They're not looking to go out there and wrestle in every bingo hall until they're 80. And God bless the people that do. They just love the business and that's what they do, and they're still out there. But these guys kind of feel like, and Cena was very clear about that, when it's over, it's over. He's not going to be coming back. It's certainly a very interesting time in wrestling.
Yeah, it certainly helps someone like Cena when you know you have options. Like, he's going to have whatever kind of backstage role he wants to fill, he can have that. Certainly Hollywood's not going away. You know, there's really no good reason to continue to put your body through the rigors of pro wrestling on a regular basis.
And I think there's something to be said, Rachel, for he's always been somebody that you feel like takes it personally when his in-ring performance doesn't live up to what he expects or what the fans expect. And I think the one thing he's been clear about in other interviews is he doesn't want to go out there and be a nostalgia act where he's just out there to hear the music and have the fans cheer. Like, he wants to be out there contributing, or he doesn't want to be out there at all.
Well, when you mentioned the bingo halls, that was my first thought. Was I know even The Undertaker had issues where he didn't want to become a mockery of himself. He wanted to go out looking as good as he's ever looked, or I mean, as good as he's going to look, but not look so poor that people would just laugh at him like, okay, you should be retiring. And I think that's where John Cena is. He wants to look like he can still perform with these young guys, but he knows that his time's just limited.
Well, his time was now, but now there are the roster right now in WWE is insanely stacked. And
Now it's Tiffy time.
It's
so.
it's Tiffy time, yes. But it's also the NXT people. It's talented people from other companies. We saw Jacob Fatu tonight make an impact in his debut. There's just so many guys that are so good now, are so young, and it is kind of their time. And I don't think he's going to do anything but put those guys over and put them on the next level, I think, as he goes out over this next year.
I think they've done a much better job just in the past year or so of elevating the people who should have previously already been elevated to kind of replace Cena as far as the next era goes. You think a couple years back, like we were sick of Roman Reigns. We didn't. They wanted him to be the ultra baby face, and they finally found a way to course correct there and turn him into this guy that people are chanting for. You have Cody, you have Rollins. I mean, these guys all top tier. You have Damian Priest and McIntyre. There's so many. Kevin Owens. I just feel like even those guys who you knew were at the top of the company even years ago now all feel much more well-suited to carry that mantle where someone like a Cena can say, yep, I'll do one more year and turn it over to these guys.
You brought up a point while we were watching the press conference live that I think is worth mentioning on the podcast before we move on to the actual PLE is Cena kind of has to look at the landscape in WWE under TKO, under Triple H, and just think, man, like, what I would have killed for like a 5-year run with these guys actually booking out the course and not having to deal with just nonsense or just getting a turd sandwich and having to make everybody believe it was delicious.
Well, it's easy to say, well, he was Vince's guy for all those years, so he must have had it great. But at the end of the day, I really believe that if you're in this line of work, it's not just about I'm the guy on top. It's give me something that I can sink my teeth into, like an actor reading a script. You want to be a part of a story, of some sort of plot that people are going to talk about and remember for years. And I think he did the best he could with a fairly uninspired creative. And I think that's a lot of why he's the most polarized guy, because you were never given much reason to like him beyond just he wins all the time.
Well, and you can't have a good babyface without a good heel. The reason that Cody Rhodes got to the levels he got to was Seth Rollins and then Roman Reigns and the Bloodline. And now Roman Reigns is going to be a great babyface because the new Bloodline has become so evil and hated that now you have Roman that can come back and actually be a face and have people chant for him. Like, you have to have both. And WWE didn't want to build a bunch of stars because Vince didn't want them all going off to Hollywood. So in the end, you don't make any stars. And your product is so mediocre and bland because of it.
Yeah.
But
well, also Lesnar during that Cody run. I think
Oh my gosh.
when you thought they were totally derailing Cody, that Lesnar feud turned out to be really good for him. I think that just took him to a new level where you had this. I mean, you call The Rock the final boss, but Brock Lesnar, I think, more fits that moniker, and for him to have that series of matches with him and kind of earn that respect, I think that was huge in saying, hey, we still believe in this guy. So should you.
That was definitely a case of terrible Vince booking that it ended up working out in the end.
Yeah.
Because they kind of got there. Because they really could have gone sideways, and that ended up being okay just because of the way it ended up.
It was the best
out.
thing you could do once it was decided we were punting on Cody for another year.
Yeah.
And it turns out it ended up working out. But yeah, the big news, John Cena retirement tour coming up in 2025. I'm sure as we get closer, we will get official dates. But it does sound like for sure Royal Rumble, Elimination Chamber, WrestleMania, those I think he's already kind of penciled in. The other dates to be announced, but it's one of those deals like I kind of hope he comes to Cincinnati. I would definitely like to buy tickets to go see him in person again.
I think he just wants to hear people singing his songs since that's become more of a thing now.
Yeah. And not John Cena sucks.
Yeah.
Think about Colgate.
Absolutely.
But good stuff, and certainly excited to see the details on the Cena retirement. We'll certainly pass those along on our podcast. Before we go to the break on the podcast version of this, let's talk about the main event first, and that was the 6-man tag match. The new Bloodline, Solo Sikoa and Tama Tonga and Jacob Fatu taking on Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens and Randy Orton. And it was the overbooked match that you expected with just a couple of ridiculous ref bumps. And in the end, it was Cody trying for probably one too many crossroads, and Jacob Fatu recovered. That allowed for Solo to eventually hit the spike and get the 1-2-3 in 24:35. So you, of course, as expected, have laid the groundwork for Solo against Cody at SummerSlam, with Solo pinning Cody here. I think you've possibly laid the groundwork for Kevin Owens and Jacob Fatu, which would be a phenomenal match at SummerSlam. I feel like there's a lot going on. Rachel, we'll start with you this time. Your thoughts on the Bloodline coming away with a big win in the six-man tag?
I mean, me never watching a Jacob Fatu match in my life until tonight, seeing him no-sell Randy Orton's vintage from the rope like that, he literally stood straight up and like Randy Orton didn't even see it coming. That blew my mind. He is definitely going to be someone to watch, and I'll be anxious to see him and Kevin Owens, hopefully at SummerSlam. I love Kevin Owens. I hope his mom's doing okay.
Yeah,
like
definitely.
thoughts and prayers to her and his family. The match was a car crash. You just can't look away. And that poor referee, I'm glad he's alive. He definitely posted on X the word ouch ×2. So, yeah, I mean, it was a great match. The Bloodlines just, they're scary.
You know, it almost had to be a car crash, because if you're going to put this match at the end of a premium live event that had 2 Money in the Bank matches and a cash-in on a world title match, you pretty much had to do something that was just totally off the rails. And of course, there's Cody involved and the Bloodline. That's pretty much the combination. You throw those in a hat, you're gonna get the overbooked mess, but it was a good mess. Like, everything really worked, and it is certainly interesting to see where this goes, because I think there were a lot of people that thought maybe Roman might come back tonight. To me, that feels like we're not there yet. I think that match at SummerSlam probably needs to happen first. Before that happens, it would be interesting to see if you get Bloodline nonsense at SummerSlam and then Roman comes back at SummerSlam to help Cody.
Be huge.
To basically say, look, you know, I'm the only one who's going to take that title off of you, but first I got to deal with my family. It'll be interesting to see your thoughts on that main event.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think it was everything it needed to be, knowing ahead of time that chances are the heels were going to come out on top. You kind of had to make it as ridiculous as possible, just to kind of give the fans something to take away from it. Jacob Fatu is tremendous. Even doing just kind of nonchalant, like trivial stuff, he makes it look so good. Like his super kick where he basically just like falls down to a knee after doing it, like that was wild. Even his Samoan drop just looked extra like effort. I just really impressed with him. You know, it's funny. You reach a certain point of being over, like a Kevin Owens and Randy Orton, and they can do the most like trivial stuff, and people go nuts over it. Just, I mean, Kevin Owens just stomping Tama Tonga in the corner, and the crowd's just eating it up. It's like, you know, sometimes less is more if people actually care about what you're doing, and I think everyone in this match can pull that off. That ref bump, the repeated ref bumps. I mean, lately, refs have been taking a beating, and you know, what was it? The last event where the guy got knocked off the apron and was sent flying.
Yeah.
And then you had after the event when McIntyre went nuts and attacked some refs and Adam Pearce. It's a rough time to be an official in the WWE.
It is. I think we need to get somebody back to bring some law and order. You know, I know William Regal's back there somewhere. Maybe we need to straighten some people out, but. You know, just other thoughts real quick before we go to a break. I'm happy for Tama Tonga. Like, that guy has, you know, did some of his best work in New Japan right before he left. They finally kind of gave him that singles push. They gave him the babyface push. He was really doing a great job there. And now to have him in the storyline and just look like $1 million, and everything he does looks good. It's great to see, because that dude's just easy to root for. Jacob Fatu, you can see why Jim Cornette loves him. Like, he's a guy, like you said, that makes everything look like it matters. The fact that Cornette even suggested that he's probably dropped about 40 pounds since Cornette worked with him.
Wow.
And is still just as crazy and dangerous as ever. The fact that they had to work to get him into Canada, and that's, they kayfabed it up, but that's real. He's never been in a foreign premium live event, pay-per-view event ever. He's never wrestled outside of the United States. So this is the first moment he had to wrestle in WWE in a foreign country, and he puts on that kind of performance that everybody's going to remember, and they put him over as the most dangerous man in wrestling. You couldn't ask for more. And again, you've got things set up now. I think, you could even go, Randy Orton against Tama Tonga if you wanted. You could do a tag match. You've got, potentially other options there. Jimmy Uso is probably hanging around somewhere as well that, at some point he's got to come back and think about revenge. So interesting to see kind of where this all goes. But
I would like to see Gorillas of Destiny and DIY at some point. I think we need to do that.
Yeah, that would be... I would love to see that one in Cleveland. I don't know if that's, like I said, I have no idea what the plans are for those guys. But
it does feel like they're kind of heating up the tag division a bit, so I just wonder if they're not ready at some point to really introduce them into it.
I hope so, because that's been my one critique of this era, and part of it was because the tag titles were unified for so long, and they weren't doing anything with them. So I'm hoping with the recent title changes on both shows that we're going to get some good tag team wrestling consistently, because I think that's the only real thing that they're missing from really putting the whole thing together. But we'll see. I think that would be a fantastic build-up. But again, Solo Sikoa gets the win, the six-man tag. So we'll see. I imagine that will set things up for SummerSlam. If you're listening on the podcast version of this, we're going to step aside for a break. We come back, we're going to talk about the other four matches on this card, and maybe a quick preview, a word or two on the NXT event coming up tomorrow night as we record this. You're listening to our recap of Money in the Bank, and we'll do more of that on the other side of this time out here on the Nerdcast Empire. Back on the Nerdcast Empire, live on Twitch. Don't forget to check out our website, nerdcastempire.com. Get to check out our store while you are there. We're going to be back on the air tomorrow. We'll not be doing an NXT recap podcast tomorrow night. We will be doing another Music Weekly tomorrow night. It'll happen at, let's say, 5 o'clock Eastern Time tomorrow. We'll move it up a couple of hours because of the NXT Premium Live event, which we will be watching. We will not be broadcasting afterward, but we're going to have the music from, I believe it's June 21st or 28th now. 21st. I knew you would know off the top of your head. Maybe not quite the selection that we had last week, but
the variety's really cool. Like the two things that I think I'm pretty sure I'm picking are both so out of left field compared to what I normally choose. I've been listening to them pretty regularly this week, actually.
So there you go. There's a teaser for Music Weekly tomorrow night, Sunday. Actually, it's okay, so it is still Saturday. I just want to make sure before I said that. Sunday, 5 o'clock Eastern Time, Music Weekly, music of June 21st. We'll look forward to that. And then we'll be back Thursday night with another episode of Anime Thursdays. Not sure what we're going to talk about Thursday. We'll talk about something on Thursday. I think just maybe some news headlines, because there was a lot of news coming out of Anime Expo, so we can talk a little bit about some of that news. So that'll be coming up Thursday. And then, of course, next weekend, another Music Weekly. Let's get to the other four matches. We'll start at the beginning now. We'll kind of jump back in time to start with the men's Money in the Bank match, which led off the Premium Live event, and it was Drew McIntyre winning a wild affair in 16:33 to win the briefcase and be Mr. Money in the Bank. So part one of his prophecy was fulfilled. He was the Money in the Bank briefcase winner. Just a wild match, as you would expect. Those guys all killed it. I thought everybody came out of it looking really good. We'll start with Mike on this one. Your thoughts on the match itself and McIntyre coming away with the win?
Yeah, the match was really crazy, but honestly, the women's might have actually taken it to a different level entirely, which I was not expecting. My notes on this are funny because, like, the first thing that really caught my attention were the entrances and just kind of the lack of reaction that Andrade got, which is unfortunate because the guy's really good. But I think it's been years since anyone's really given him something to make you care about him a whole lot.
Yeah.
And then I also noted the middle rope reverse Spanish fly that he did, which was just insane.
Yeah.
Gable German suplexing the ladder. That was pretty wild. Just a lot of different, interesting spots. I kind of had a feeling McIntyre would win, even though I didn't pick that. But I wasn't really expecting... I guess I wasn't expecting at all just to become the thing that it became over the course of the event. But yeah, I was certainly impressed with it.
Yeah, I thought it was a really good match. And then just a quick thought on Andrade. I think the dude just needs a really good feud. Like, I just feel like he kind of got sucked into the LWO vortex, and I just kind of aimlessly has been floating along. They've been doing some nice vignettes for him. I think they've been really good, but they need to get him involved in something where people can really get in, because I felt like he had a good showing tonight. He did some crazy things. The fans did pop for some of those things.
Yeah.
He's really good. We just need to give him something that allows people to see that, whether it's heel or face, because I think he can do both, but they need to find a way to kind of get him on that.
Yeah.
Rachel, your thoughts on the Money in the Bank match?
Like you said, everyone looked really strong. It was pretty much a train wreck, just like most Money in the Bank matches were. The fact that Drew McIntyre won because he threw a ladder like a javelin at Jey Uso, who really was the fan favorite, that people were really rooting for Jey Uso. I did not pick Jey Uso. I did pick Drew McIntyre to win. I'm surprised there was no Wyatt Six interaction at all with Gable. I mean, they weren't on the card. They weren't on the paper or the Premium Live event at all, which is fine. Gable's still terrified and looking over his shoulder every 5 seconds. But yeah, like Mike said, him suplexing the ladder was ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, it turned out the way I expected it to.
I think the end of the men's Money in the Bank ladder match kind of foreshadowed what was going to happen. And when I was talking to Mike earlier this afternoon, I don't usually get predictions right. This was the way it all unfolded was exactly what I said this afternoon. Yeah. But I feel like Drew, again, kind of lived by the hate and died by the hate. He lived by the hate by throwing the ladder at Jey Uso to allow him to win the match. He would later die by the hate, as we'll get to when we get around to the world title match. But McIntyre, again, authentic character, and I think that's just going to make what's going to happen coming ahead even more awesome. Next up was the Intercontinental title match. I feel like people, when they review this event, are going to kind of forget this match, and it's a shame because I thought this was really excellent in-ring stuff. Felt like they left something on the bone here. Even saying that, I feel like Sami Zayn won after a haluva kick in 13-13. I feel like they have left room for these two to do this again if they want to, even a little bit longer. Both guys came away looking amazing. Breaker is just a freak. The only thing I can think of, because I saw criticism online about the finish or the result, and the only thing I can figure is maybe we're going to still get Chad Gable with his new heel stable overcoming Sami Zayn to win the Intercontinental title, and that's kind of what we're setting it up for, and then Breaker as a babyface, because I think Breaker, he could be a heel because he has the gift of gab and he can talk you into hating him. But he's so good and so athletic, it's going to be hard to get the fans to not be impressed by him. You could have Breaker then turn around as a babyface down the road and beat Gable to win the title. But we'll start with Rachel on this one. Your thoughts? It was a shorter match. I think it was the shortest match of the night. But overall, I thought it was really good.
I thought it was a great match. Yeah, Braun's just a freak, like you said. He's so fast. Like, when you see him run off the ropes, it just seems unreal. Yeah, both guys look strong. I did not pick Sammy to win. But I'm glad he did. I'm glad he's getting a good run because I think he deserves it after everything he's been through over the last few years. But eventually Braun is going to be so over. I think he, like you said, he's just so talented. And I think he has some of the charisma for it. I think he's going to be huge at some point. It's just not yet.
Well, and I gave myself credit for making a prediction. Mike was the one that got this one right, was basically handling Breaker like he was handling NXT, where they pushed him hard, but he didn't get the win the first time. He had to actually struggle and battle and eventually got the win. So you kind of called it this time that Zayn ended up getting the win. And again, his Sami Zayn, they sell him as his underdog, but he's so good that way. And the crowd, of course, behind him, just a phenomenal result.
It's kind of interesting the way they've treated Breaker, both in NXT and then here. He has all of like the physicality and just impressiveness of someone like a Goldberg, but they've injected this but there's this one thing you're missing, and that's why you don't win the title the first time you try for it. Back in NXT, it was like he made one mistake, and that's what kept him from winning. And then here, he kind of went a little nuts and possibly hurt his knee in the middle of the match, and it kind of led to what felt like a fairly straightforward Sami Zayn victory, which is interesting. I had a feeling Zayn would win because of that, just to, hey, let's not Goldberg this dude. Let's let's remember that Sami Zayn's the dude that beat Gunther.
Yeah.
Like, let's try to keep that in mind when we have Breaker go up against him the first time. I kind of thought that we might see Breaker just murder him after the match, which didn't happen. So I'm kind of curious where they want to go with his character after this, because he seemed to they showed him outside the ring and he looked not happy, but he didn't like freak out, kind of like maybe you would expect.
I feel like when they first called him up on the main roster, like the first week or two, he was clearly babyface. Like, look at this guy, he does all these impressive things, and then like they had like a 4 or 5 week stretch where it's like, okay, he's bad. Like, he's a bad guy. And now I think they've realized the fans just love watching the things that he does. So it's like you don't have him beat up Sammy in Canada because that would solidify him as a bad guy. Rather, you can have him maybe take the edgy babyface route instead so that people will pop when he eventually wins the title.
It kind of worked out pretty well because they were able to turn him not being in the King of the Ring tournament into something they could work with, when in reality they probably just didn't want to see him lose in it, and they knew he wasn't going to win it, so why bother having him there at all? And it's turned into this whole like chip on his shoulder, I'm going to show you that I'm a Steiner. I mean,
right.
My God.
Well, they mentioned the Steiner line tonight, so that was
they've been
interesting.
mentioning that.
So that's good, but
Frankensteiner.
Yeah, which was ridiculous again. The dude's so smooth. But, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how his character continues to develop from here. And welcome, Chris, in the chat joining us. He did not get a chance to catch the event tonight, so we are breaking news. And if you're like Chris and you're just joining us, of course, the big news on the top of our program tonight was the news that John Cena going to step away from wrestling after 2025, going to go on a retirement tour starting in January through December, and then he says he is done. So really interesting news there. And then, of course, the Bloodline winning the main event, Solo pinning Cody to probably earn a title match at SummerSlam. So we've talked about the men's Money in the Bank. Drew McIntyre won it. Then, of course, Sami Zayn retaining the Intercontinental title. Then was the John Cena segment. We've kind of already talked about that. Then the World Heavyweight title match, which was certainly interesting. In the end, it was Damian Priest retaining at 15:47.
Surviving, actually.
Yes.
Surviving.
Oh my gosh.
There was certainly one interesting spot in the match where it looked like after a Falcon Arrow that looked like Priest was out. He did not kick out like he was supposed to, or the music was supposed to start playing for McIntyre. That one of the two things was supposed to happen. It didn't. So the ref pulled up his hand and didn't count the 3, even though it sure looked like a 3. But again, those things do happen from time to time. But then McIntyre's music hit immediately after. That was at 13:08. He was basically, he cashed in his briefcase. He was in the match, made it a triple threat, which, of course, as you know, makes it no disqualification.
Genius.
1 minute later, here comes CM Punk. Punk comes in, wrecks McIntyre, hits him with the belt, and that allows Damian Priest to hit South of Heaven and hit the 1, 2, 3. I did see some criticism on this finish, and the only thing I will say is it's fair to feel like that CM Punk would want McIntyre to win so that he would get a title match, but there's a couple problems with that. One, we already know who's going to get the title match at SummerSlam, and that is Gunther. That's already set. So even if Punk lets McIntyre win, then beats him up, or cost him the cash in before the briefcase, then there's nothing there at all. There's no title match coming at SummerSlam. Punk wants McIntyre in the ring, and that means he can't be the champion because we know Gunther's getting that next match. So that was off the table. And secondly, this whole feud's been built on hate. It is basically one up. And if you're, again, characters reacting authentically, CM Punk was so enraged by everything that's happened and getting beat up in Chicago that he didn't care about the match. He just wanted to make sure McIntyre didn't win a championship. And he was there and he made that happen. And Damian Priest rolls on to probably lose to Gunther at SummerSlam. I don't know. It's great to see Priest, continue on. I hope he's okay because he definitely looked a little shaken up at the end. But the interesting thing to me was the collateral damage, the fact that now Seth Rollins can't challenge Damian Priest for the title, so Punk ends up screwing Rollins, which takes us all the way back to when Punk showed up and Rollins was all fired up about it. So now you have built this 3-person hate triangle. So it'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out. Start with you, Mike. Thoughts on all that? Because there's a lot going on in this situation.
Yeah, I think first off, just going back to the match itself, it's interesting to see Rollins kind of throw in some new moves into his moveset. This is kind of late in the game for him. Definitely kind of cool seeing like the springboard swanton, the lion salt. Just, there's no reason for him to do it, but hey, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really awkward when Priest didn't kick out. It looked like because they were kind of going back and forth whether Priest was going to hit Rollins with the broken arrow or if Rollins was going to finish with the Falcon arrow. They kept doing the knee to the head of the guy doing the move to you. And I can only assume that Rollins must have caught him a little better than he wanted to with a knee because he definitely had his bell rung at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's genius. I mean, everything about it was just like, it doesn't matter to Punk whether McIntyre... The result of the match was meaningless. He just wanted to ruin McIntyre's day.
Yep.
Like, that's how it was. I mean, the man did steal his bracelet after killing him in Chicago, so that's a big deal. And I love the fact that the hatred between those two guys kind of made you feel like, well, I know originally before Punk got hurt, they were really pushing this Rollins and Punk thing, but since these guys are so at each other's throat, they'll probably just put that on the back burner. They could just leave it until months down the road. But then you have this instance where, because of his meddling, he just totally screws over Rollins' chance of having a title match, and it's like, wait, nope, we're putting this back on the forefront. There's clearly a problem here too. I think that's brilliant.
And I think it'll let you set up what I would assume will be a triple threat match at SummerSlam between those three. I think that makes the most sense because in the long-term picture of things, I'm guessing Gunther's going to win the title at SummerSlam, so this Rollins can't challenge for the title is only going to last another month.
Yeah.
And then Gunther's going to be the champion. So it's not like the Cody AEW, he can never be champion now. Like, that would be...
And the thing is, it doesn't have to last because
Right.
this is the fact
Right.
that to Rollins... CM Punk knew that was the stipulation and still was okay with getting involved. So that's unforgivable.
Because in Rollins' eyes, he'll say, like, you could have gotten involved before he cashed in. You could have let me win the match and then let him cash in and then attack him.
You could have kept him from winning Money in the Bank to begin with.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly, because you were clearly here, so why did you not interfere at that point and cost him? Like, so, again, every character in the story has the correct motivation for what they're going to do. And, of course, we saw Drew McIntyre afterward come out and yelling like a maniac, and like you said, attacked a couple referees and Adam Pearce, which should be interesting to see what comes of that on Monday night, whether there's any kind of disciplinary action toward Drew McIntyre. But get your thoughts, Rachel, just on the chaos of this match. And in the end, it was Damian Priest retaining his title.
I mean, it was ridiculous. It was pretty much how I figured it would go. Like, I figured Drew would come down. Because, he called his shot. He said, I'm going to win, and I'm going to cash in tonight. So, I mean, do I think he should have cashed in, like, in the middle of the match and made it no disqualification? No, I think that was kind of obviously that's how it had to go, but not the smartest move. But again, like you said, he's blinded by his hatred. So he just wanted to get out there and win the belt as quickly as possible. I love that they're bringing Seth Rollins back into it because obviously, like if anyone's watched the documentary that was on YouTube, that was planned for WrestleMania before CM Punk got injured. It was gonna be him and Seth Rollins at WrestleMania. So I do like that they're not forgetting about that completely because again, when he showed back up at Survivor Series, Seth Rollins was furious, like cussing out the camera, like he was mad. So to just not go, oh, that didn't happen anymore. Like obviously, Seth has a bone to pick with him too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how they play this up for the next month because it'll be hard to keep those guys apart, which I think is going to be part of the intrigue of the build.
On a side note, something that I think they're doing a lot better now than they ever used to is allowing the commentators and other personnel like the pre-show people, they allow them to be characters too. They can have legitimate reactions and not just kind of be lukewarm about things. I mean,
Wade Barrett.
Yeah, Barrett's reactions to all of this that's going on has just been tremendous. Adam Pearce has been doing some great work too. There's no reason to not let these people have more pronounced personalities.
Well, you had Corey jumping up and stopping Rollins.
That's right.
Basically, keeping him from getting at Punk, just saying, look, you need
After
to
earlier pointing out how they've been friends for over 10 years,
Yeah,
so
they're
kind of
besties.
like, oh, well, yeah, he listened to him because they're buddies. They've known each other for such a long time.
Right. A lot of that little stuff makes a lot of sense, which makes it all work out so much better than how it was been done in the past, and it makes it a lot better. Now, we know that Damian Priest has a match with Gunther, but Finn Balor certainly had some very ominous words when Priest left the clubhouse, saying, yeah, boss. And those guys did not get involved as he requested, which again, ties into the whole cash in, because obviously Judgment Day could have come out and neutralized Drew McIntyre, but they were under orders not to come out, and they did not. But there's clearly some tension there as well that is going to have to be sorted out, which is going to be another element to play out. Yeah. Also, there's a certain member of Judgment Day who's probably getting pretty close to coming back, and that's Rhea Ripley. And obviously, Liv Morgan wasn't on this card, but that's going to be another huge story. What happens with her and Dominic and Liv and Judgment Day when that happens? Because I have a feeling that's going to be sooner rather than later. So very interesting stuff all around.
I like that they tease the thing with Judgment Day, but don't add that to the match tonight to kind of further cloudy things. They kind of know which part of the plot they want to progress, and they leave the other one in the background. Presumably for the next time Priest is doing something important, and that's when that's going to come to a head.
Chris's comment in the chat, I think we will see Demon Balor again, because they've been hinting at it a lot. We've seen the Demon logo up above on the clubhouse. I have a feeling there's a little something to that. So it's going to be very interesting to see. But wild stuff in the world title picture for sure, and everything coming out of it's going to be very interesting. Final match that we're going to talk about is the Women's Money in the Bank match, and it was honestly could have very well been the match of the night. It was really outstanding and hard to watch sometimes because clearly the 6 people in that match just decided that they were just going to go out and hurt themselves and each other with no regard for their well-being. And it made for, because I was a little worried with the spot it was in, because it was after the cash-in and all the stuff that happened in the world title match. It came after the men's Money in the Bank ladder match, and before this 6-man bloodline match that was going to end, that you knew was going to have shenanigans in it. But they found a way to make it stand out, and in the end, the big spot at the end was Chelsea Green at the top of the ladder, and Tiffany Stratton pushed her off over the top rope through 2 tables, allowed Tiffy time to cash in and win the Money in the Bank at 16:51. She has now missed Money in the Bank.
The tables that they put up together.
They did.
Yeah.
It's really,
so their alliance lasted until that point right there. Yeah. But again, I thought it was hard to watch at times just because it was so violent, but it was maybe one of the best women's Money in the Bank ladder matches I think I've seen. Rachel, we'll start with you. Your thoughts on Stratton winning and the match in general?
I mean, Trainwreck doesn't cover it. I mean, I think I gasped and made more noise during that match, just horrified. Like Zoe Stark hitting her head on the ladder. I swore it was going to start bleeding. I don't think it did. I was rooting for Chelsea Green. She's been one that she's really solidified her spot on the main roster after years of getting injured and kind of having to be pushed aside or let go, and then she's come back. I think she's done fantastic, and I really, really wanted her to win. But I'm so glad for Tiffany. I think she's going to do great on the main roster with the Money in the Bank briefcase. But yeah, just it was horrifying to watch sometimes.
Well, didn't Zoe Stark also basically get spiked on top of her head on what was basically like a pile driver of some kind?
It was some sort of Michinoku driver or something from the ladder onto a ladder bridge.
Oh, it was horrible.
That was nuts. Like the spots in the ring on the ladders was just, again, no regard for usually even the person giving it, because in many cases they were dropping their back on the ladder as well as the person they were dropping.
Valkyria did like a fisherman buster at one point onto the ladder. I'm like, man, what are you doing?
Like I'm sure that part of using those type of ladders is they make a lot of noise when you hit them, and not to say that it doesn't hurt, but it probably doesn't hurt as bad as it sounds sometimes. Yeah. But they're like when Zoe Stark hit her head on the ladder, there's no way for that not to hurt. No. Like, there's just no way that you just don't get dinged up there. But overall, it was wild, but I think it made for an amazing spectacle.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about some of the other ridiculous spots, Io Sky stomping Valkyria when she was hanging upside down from the ladder, followed by Valkyria hitting her with a spider German suplex, was just tremendous spot. And man, Chelsea Green falling through those tables was picture perfect. Like she hit them exactly how you'd want to, I think.
Well, Jordan Grace posted a video from her doing that before.
Oh, really?
During
TNA,
And she did not land so nicely. So this time it looked really good. Like even Jordan Grace made comments about it.
Yeah, it's nuts, and of course, they set the whole thing up because they did the whole interview before at the top of the CN Tower with
Which is
them.
terrifying.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
I remember looking at that thing because I thought if I ever go to Toronto, I'd like to go up in the CN Tower because you can just go up and just be behind a window like an observation room. You don't have to climb out, but they bungee you and they hang you out there. And I did the Sears Tower thing where you sit out in the box. It's hanging out over, which that's scary enough, but you're clear, you have things around you. You're not going anywhere. They just had the bungee cables, but it set the tone for she's afraid of heights. And then, of course, the ridiculous spots at the
Or she's
beginning
taking
of
the ladder and trying to hit the case with the ladder.
She's priceless.
And again, even the first time she tried to climb the ladder, she's like, no, I can't do this. And, of course, she builds up to it and then gets thrown off, takes the big spot. But, I saw an interview with Chad Gable that was posted from somebody this weekend that basically said that there is nobody in WWE right now that is doing a better job with character work in no matter how much time she gets a week than Chelsea Green.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things you just look at her and think, how did you have her and let her go and think she wasn't it? Because, again, she's somebody who can go in the ring, but she's got the character that would have fit in under Vince's era as well that just, basically it just feels like Triple H has just told her, look, you just go. You just do whatever you feel like your character needs to do.
Well, we know the differences in the senses of humor between Vince and someone like Triple H, and I think that goes a long way. I don't know if Vince ever would have found anything she did to be funny.
No.
That's a good point.
But, when I was looking at this match and, part of my choice to pick her kind of goes back to, when you think of Brock Lesnar winning Money in the Bank and just the antics and just the goofiness that he exuded with the briefcase, that's now on my mind when I look at these matches. It's who do I want to see walking around with the Money in the Bank briefcase? And Chelsea Green is one of the most entertaining people on the show, and I thought that the idea of her having Money in the Bank would have been just gold.
I was all set to pick her because in my heart I wanted her to win, but in my head's because I was thinking in my mind, okay, this is what's going to happen with the men's Money in the Bank, and it's going to get cashed in tonight, and it's going to be gone. So, okay, so the women's, they're clearly going to want to extend this out. And Green would have made a great choice for that as well, but I thought, who's the next up-and-coming person that it feels like they're ready to push? And that's kind of why I ended up going with Stratton to win it. But, yeah, Chelsea Green, I look forward to seeing her show up on my TV every week, and I think that's why fans are getting behind her because she's so entertaining. So, great showing by everybody in that match as well. I thought everybody came away. Hopefully everybody's okay. I think we'll find out probably later on.
She and Stratton both. The fans were solidly behind both of them.
Yeah, they're pretty happy with the outcome no matter what at that point.
Yeah, no question about it. But in the end, it was Tiffany Stratton. It was Tiffy time. As Chris mentioned, to the tune of Vader's theme. It's time. It is Tiffy time.
She's going to be the one to retire Cena.
Maybe.
His time's up. Now it's Tiffy time.
That's right. Of course, we made the joke during the live thing that this allowed Michael Cole to move on from boss time to Tiffy time.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't really feel the loss there at all. But, yeah, so that was a wild event. And before we kind of sign off tonight, just real quickly, let's talk about NXT Heatwave coming up tomorrow night, 7 o'clock Eastern Time. I will probably try to send out some tweets again throughout the event like I did tonight, but we will not have a podcast afterward. But let me run down the card real quick, then you can each tell me kind of the one match maybe you're looking forward to tomorrow. Starts off on the pre-show. They managed to get Carmen Petrovic and Ariana Grace, two Canadians, on the card in a pre-show match against JC Jane and Jasmine Nix. At the main card, you have Nathan Frazier and Axiom defending their tag team championships against Chase University. It'll be Andre Chase and Duke Hudson. You have Kalani Jordan defending the NXT Women's North American Championship against Sol Ruka, which could really be outstanding. Obafemi defending against Wes Lee in the Men's North American Championship, and if Obafemi wins, Wes Lee cannot challenge for the title again as long as Femi is the champion. You have the NXT Women's Championship match between Roxanne Perez and Lola Vice. And then the Fatal 4-Way match for the NXT Men's Championship. Trick Williams defending against Javon Evans, Ethan Page, and Sean Spears. Should really be an outstanding event. I think it's a really solid card all the way around. I'll save my pick for last. We'll start with Rachel. Rachel, tell me what match you are most looking forward to out of that card tomorrow night.
And I think the Fatal 4-Way. I think that's going to be a great match. Seeing Trick Williams against I mean, Ethan Page, he's only had one real big match in NXT. I'd like to see what he can do in the main event. And Sean Spears, too. I mean, seeing these guys, especially Sean Spears, who was with the company and then come back, I'm excited for that one.
Should be really interesting. I think it's going to be a great way to close out the event. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's really difficult, to be honest. I'm kind of anxious to see the Women's North American Championship. I think both Kalani Jordan and Sol Ruka are great. It's kind of funny, though, just overall. Like, there was a time where you would have the NXT pay-per-view on Saturday and then the main roster one on Sunday, and there was always that, like, man, I don't know if they should do it that way anymore because the NXT card always ends up outshining the main roster. I think they finally course-corrected that, where the main roster shows are better than the NXT shows, which is really how it should be. Yeah. I think this will be really good, but it's going to be hard to live up to just what we saw tonight.
But I think they've done it by making the main roster shows better.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think Vince's first idea was to make NXT worse. Yeah. And that's how he was going to make that better.
A lot of the people who I really enjoyed in NXT are now on the main roster and actually doing what they're supposed to do, which helps a lot.
Yeah, well, no question about that. I'm intrigued by Obafemi and Wes Lee. I think there's an opportunity there potentially to give the title back to Wes Lee. We were talking tonight about who's going to carry the mantle of hustle, loyalty, and respect when John Cena retires. Wes Lee is a perfect example of that because he feels like that's his character lives by those mantras as well. So I could see that. I am interested to see the results of the last two matches because I feel like that Lola Vice has come a long way very quickly. I feel like Roxanne Perez is holding that title until Julia shows up, which is rumored to be possibly a premium live event over SummerSlam weekend, which has not yet been announced. But I think that is expected that there will be an NXT event kind of around that time.
They've done a good job at setting Lola Vice up as a contender without you necessarily thinking she's going to win.
Right. She's elevated her character. I think she's very viable to be in this match. I don't know if she's ready to win it. And again, you're clearly going to do a big match for Julia's debut. And I think Roxanne Perez is someone who can absolutely work that match. Yeah. And then the Fatal 4-Way. And I think people who have not seen Javon Evans yet need to check out Javon Evans because this dude has come in and basically within the span of a few months has elevated himself into the main event of the brand. And, he's another dude that's got a very high ceiling but has decided to take the hard road, not the easy road, which, those kind of comments, stirred some controversy earlier in the year. But he seems like a guy who could have been a fit for AEW or New Japan. But he's decided to go NXT, and I think he's already been very well rewarded. He seems like a guy who just gets better every time you see him. And he's in there with, another guy who's still up and coming, and Trick Williams, who's the champion, and two veterans of the ring who are kind of looking for their moment in their home country. So, there's a lot of different ways they could go with that main event match. If Williams loses without being pinned, you have a very easy way to eventually flip the belt back to him if you want to do that. Yeah. And you could potentially give Ethan Page or Sean Spears their moment in Canada and make it a feel-good thing. But I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be a great event. NXT, maybe it won't be better, quote-unquote, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, I don't mean by any stretch of the imagination it won't be good.
Yeah.
It's just I think there's not that weird... Why do I enjoy the developmental more than the main one?
Yeah.
I think that's thankfully finally been fixed.
And I think the other thing to keep in the back of your mind before we sign off for tonight is we're just a couple months away from NXT moving to the CW. We're going to see a ramp up of that product before it heads to television. And rumors, and I've not seen anybody legitimate report this yet, but rumors are they want to do a takeover-like event for the first night on the CW, which certainly would not be surprising. They've done a lot of mid-pay-per-view pay-per-views on TV anyway, so that would not be a shock. But I think we're going to see some big names coming through, whether they're from outside of the company, whether they're from inside, because obviously we're still sowing the seeds of this TNA crossover with Charlie Dempsey showing up this week on TNA television, and more to come in later tapings, not to spoil that for those who watch TNA, but there will be some more crossover and some upcoming episodes. So you've got that. You've got maybe some more crossover with Japan. You've got maybe other free agents, and obviously people from the main roster who may be cycling out of programs
You got Bloodsport too.
You've got Bloodsport, obviously, with, you've got
Creeds.
the Creeds,
Yeah.
the Creeds and Shayna Baszler again. And again, a lot of interesting things are going to be happening, I think, as we head through the summer. And, of course, we're about a week away from AJ Styles wrestling Naomichi Marufuji in Pro Wrestling Noah, which is going to be a huge deal for sure. So in the summer of wrestling, it's going to be a lot of fun. And, of course, we're heading in to SummerSlam, which will be in our home state, up on the other end of the state in Cleveland, Ohio. Should be a great few
The rock and
weeks.
roll capital of the universe.
As I found
Apparently.
out tonight. Who knew?
turns out.
Great stuff. But, Rachel, final thoughts on this evening? Anything else involving wrestling? Your final thoughts.
Great PLE. I'm anxious to see who all fights John Cena because there's definitely a plethora of people on X already putting getting their shot in there. I saw Hurricane Helms, Baron Corbin. I mean, the list will go on and on. So it's definitely an exciting time to be a WWE fan.
I just made the joke tonight, and then we'll see if it becomes reality that, Chris Jericho immediately going to Tony Khan either to find out when his contract is up or to hey, you need to make good and stop making shots at WWE so I can do this crossover to get one more match with Cena before he retires, because you just know Chris Jericho would not pass up the opportunity to get in
No.
there with Cena
No.
one more time. But Mike, your thoughts on everything going on?
Yeah, entertaining show. Excited to see what's next. And I think when it comes to Cena, last match potential, I think there's only a couple logical answers. You have Baron Corbin, you have R-Truth, or Fred Rosser. Those are the three obvious choices for Cena's last match. Let's not mess this up.
I can't believe you didn't say Joe Henry.
Yes,
Say his name and he appears.
I
Yeah.
believe in Joe Hendry.
I think it's going to be interesting to see. I get the feeling that he's probably. I think we're going to see him get that 17th title win.
Yeah.
I think they're going to set that up. I think we're going to see him lose to a future star of the company, whether it's Gunther, whether it's Braun Breaker, or somebody like that he can put over in a big title match. I think that we're going to see him work with anybody and everybody that he can get his hands on. I think we're going to see him wrestle a lot of tag matches. I think we're going to see
Probably.
him get, he's probably going to hitch his wagon to Cody or Rollins, and basically whoever they're feuding with, he's going to get involved in some multi-man matches, because he's not going to wrestle 30 singles matches probably. So
Wouldn't think so.
No.
but it's going to be fun. It is kind of sad. It's another, it's funny because I saw an announcement today. It's not related to wrestling, but talking about tennis and talking about the Cincinnati Open. They were like, well, this year is the 20th anniversary of the women returning to the Cincinnati Open. It's like, is it really?
Wow.
Yeah, that was my reaction. 20 years? Sure enough, 2004 was when Lindsay Davenport came back and won the
That's amazing.
first women's tournament there in decades. That's again just that reminder that we're all getting old, but that's just the way it goes. On Mike's birthday, no less. So
Yay,
happy birthday to
Mike.
Mike.
What are the odds?
I feel like I should have probably let you win the pick'em tonight, since it's your
Ah.
birthday. But that's
I should have picked better.
I guess also an option.
Or
but
they should have had the right people win. And
There you go.
they should have
exactly the
listened
way-
to you for
Yeah,
your
Exactly.
they should got with you.
They dropped the ball, not me.
But Chris passed along his birthday wishes as well.
Thank
which
you.
is a good time to bring tonight's proceedings to a close. And what a night it was. Another really interesting WWE Premium Live event. Thank you for joining us, whether you're joining us live or on the VOD or on your favorite podcast provider. We really do appreciate it. Episode 75 tonight of the Nerdcast Empire. We are 25 episodes away from the big 100. It's kind of crazy to think that, but we'll be there before you know it. So it's kind of wild. Don't forget, we'll be back in less than 24 hours' time for another episode of Music Weekly. We'll be breaking down the music of June the 21st. Looking forward to that coming up 5 o'clock Eastern Time, a couple hours early on Sunday, so that we can get ready to sit down and enjoy the NXT Premium Live event tomorrow night. Big thanks to Stove Leg Media for their continued support. Big thanks to Chris for holding down the chat as always and getting spoiled on all the results of the event. Big thanks to Mike and Rachel as well, joining me in the studio. We'll be back tomorrow night for another episode of Music Weekly. Until then, don't forget to join the Empire, the Nerdcast Empire.